All right, the Sig 365 X Macro. I have been getting a ton of requests to do a review on this thing from not only you guys, but from my Patreons as well. So we're gonna go over what's right with it, what's wrong with it, what I think it should come with. So you guys have all the information you'll need if you are looking at an X Macro. Okay, the 365X Macro. What exactly is this thing? Because it's got a 365 XL slide, it's got a 365 style barrel in there, being a little bit shorter, and then some integral compensation right there in the slide with a little bit bigger of a polymer grip, giving us 17 rounds. So it's kind of a bit of a mutt. Sig basically took the 365 XL, like this one on that beautiful Icarus Precision grip. They took a look at it and said, how can we make the barrel shorter, keep the slide the same length, add some compensation, and shove a few more rounds in there to make people happy. But they did still keep that modularity that the 365 and the 320 is known for. So if you already have an XL, we're gonna talk about what you can do or not do depending on what you already have. Before we go any further, a huge shout out to all of my Patrons. They are a massive support structure for the channel. And since I'm no longer monetized here on the platform, they're the main support structure along with my affiliate link stuff. So if you're looking to pick up anything like my favorite EDC gear or any of the stuff I've ever reviewed, check that first link in the description. It takes you to my blog post. There's nothing for sale on my website. I think that's where the confusion is with my monetization status, but there are links and codes there. So if you're interested in picking anything up, you can check that out. Now, if you have never seen the X Macro before or looked into it, it is another striker fired polymer pistol from Sig. But this one is giving us a 17 round capacity. But what doesn't come with that 17 round capacity is the size. So this is much similar to the size of a Hellcat Pro, if you know what that is, and nowhere near the size of a 17 round Glock 17. The 365 X Macro still uses that stainless steel chassis design, so all of that modularity is going to be there. It's going to be 6.6 inches long, it's going to be 1.1 inches wide, and have an overall height of 5.2 inches. The barrel in there is going to be only 3.1 inches, even though it's got quite a bit of a longer slide, and it's going to be made of carbon steel. It's going to come out at a trim and slim 21.5 ounces. It's got a flat trigger, which is very standard for the X series, a full pick rail for all of those options from lights to lasers, to mini bayonets if that is your thing. It also has very nice Sig X-ray green night sights, which are dark down in the rear, bold green in the front, and the rear sight stays on the slide so you do not lose it when you add an optic. It's got the Sig Nitron coating, and you will get two 17 round magazines with it. But for all honesty, Sig, you should be giving us 3 magazines for the cost of this thing. I have to say the overall feeling of the 365 X Macro is really nice. And I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with Sig because I really like the 320X series, the 365Xs, and I pretty much don't like anything else they make in the handgun world. And I've also been known to pick on them a little bit for their pricing, saying they make a great $500 pistol for $800. Nevertheless, the X series grips just seem to fit my hand, even in these smaller ones like the X Macro. The texture is really nice on them. They have less aggressive grip angles than the Glock, and that single finger groove just seems to suck my hand up into that grip so you can really control the recoil impulse. When it comes to the overall size of the X Macro, I think it's about as perfect as we are going to get. It's given us a 17 round capacity, yet it's small, but not small enough to where people with larger hand, like double XL size hands, aren't going to be able to carry this thing and really use it. And out on the range, it really does give you the impression that you have a much larger pistol in your hand than something in the micro or compact or subcompact world. And I guess that probably has something to do with the name, hence Macro. When it comes to all the rest of the controls in here, besides the trigger, which I'm a fan of the X triggers in these, it's going to be Sig 365 as usual, from the magazine release, the slide stop, slide release, and that takedown lever. So if you are familiar with any of those at all, it's going to be exactly the same. I have to say, out on the range, it confused me a little bit for the first couple of magazines because that initial pop when you pulled the trigger felt like it was going to recoil like the 365 or the 365 XL, but then the slide just seemed to stay much more flat than its smaller counterparts. You definitely know it's not a full-size pistol in your hand, but it recoils a heck of a lot better than most other things, in my opinion, in the compact or subcompact world, without being too small. The trigger on the X Macro is far better than its larger counterparts. I've got several 320X carries, X full, stuff like that, and the one thing I've noticed is those triggers are super flat to me. There's not really a positive engagement, positive break, or positive reset. It just kind of happens and it's kind of flat. Now, when it comes to the X Macro and even the 365 XL, I've noticed that the trigger reset on it is far better than other stuff in the market. And you can just hear it. That's just way better than the 320 full-size stuff. And I have to say, I like it more the way it is in these smaller 365s. And that likely has something to do with a little bit of a difference in that module design and a little bit of a difference in the overall striker design as well. I did, however, notice that the trigger on the X Macro is a little bit heavier on the pull than my 365 XL. It's almost like they changed some springs out in there, maybe to kind of deal with that whole drop safe thing. It seems to be going around in the news again. Once you get used to how it feels out on the range, it runs quite nice and it runs really flat. It gives you the impression, like I said, you've got a much larger pistol in your hand. The one thing I did notice is, though, much like my 365 XL, the length of my fingers kind of messes with me a little bit when I'm repositioning from straight along the frame rail to trying to index that trigger. I catch the frame a little bit. That's not going to be a problem for most people, just me because I have larger hands. So something that I will have to train myself into and continue to work on if I decide to carry the X Macro. I ran the X Macro with all iron sights and no optic out there. The sights that come with this thing are night sights. They are blacked out in the rear and they have that bold green front. And these are some of my favorite sights, especially since they come with the pistol. There's no need to change them out. So everything from initial target ID, transitioning, it's very easy with these bright bold sights without being an obnoxious color if you're not into the orange or red or anything else. And the fact that you don't lose those sights when you put an optic on there, you can still have a backup set of sights on there from the factory, is definitely a big positive. So my overall takeaways from the range experience on the X Macro is it's got plenty of capacity with those 17 rounds, which is always nice to have extra capacity. The trigger is solid, much more so than the larger counterparts in the 320. And it's got a great overall feel with that little bit of a larger grip on there. And you have the ability to change out those back straps. And having a slide in there that's integrally comped is not only cool, but it definitely reduces that muzzle rise. Let's take a good up close look at the X Macro, compare it to other things in its size category and of course capacity category, and then do some trigger pulls so you can see the weight that this thing's gonna be when you're pulling the trigger. All right, we're gonna take a quick up close look at the 365 X Macro here and do some trigger pulls for you. So talking about the frame, it's gonna have that same aggressive sandpaper texture, single finger groove here, but we will get the addition of some interchangeable back straps here, which is not the case on the standard 365 XL slides. Single finger groove in there, which is pretty nice. Some depressions up in here so you don't accidentally activate your controls. You're going to get a full rail up there for multiple different options. And that standard Sig 365 style trigger slope right there. Single-sided slide release, takedown lever, single-sided but reversible mag release right there. That's pretty much it for the differences here, besides one that this frame on the Macro is definitely a little bit more beefed up in a couple of areas as compared to the standard 365 XL. So not only in the trigger guard area, but up along the front rail, you can see, I get these side by side for you, there is a noticeable difference in the thickness of those trigger guards right there. And it might be tough to tell on camera, but if you look up towards the front right there, that's going to be the area that's really going to give it away. So not sure why they thickened them up, but they did. Let's go ahead and do a couple of trigger pulls here. And then we're going to do some comparisons to other things in the same kind of size capacity category. So we will do 3 pulls here unless I get something weird or if I mess up. Okay, that one felt a little tough. That one came in at 6 pounds and 1 ounce. We'll enter that one. So sometimes this is a little bit big to fit in these smaller trigger guards. So I got to kind of work it in like this and then pull it straight. That one came in at 4.3, so that was probably a little bit better. It didn't drag as much on the frame, but we're gonna go with it. We'll do one more here. Try and get in that trigger shoe. All right, so that one came in at 3 pounds 13. We're definitely gonna do a fourth because that's lighter than it is. I can promise you. All right, so 5 pounds, 5 ounces. And quite honestly, that's about what it feels like. So overall on 4 pulls, we're gonna get 4 pounds and 13 ounces for the overall average right there. Now let's talk some size comparisons here with the Macro. So this has 17 rounds. So let's bring in a big competitor, and I mean big by big as in main competitor and size. So this is a Glock 17 round, and this is the Sig Macro. So look at the size differences between these two, not only in length but thickness, everything. Grip, you got that aggressive grip angle back there. So it is quite a bit of difference for giving you that same capacity, which is the reason I wanted to bring the Glock 17 in there. Let's compare it to a more direct competitor, which would be the Glock 19, which is a compact, right? Well, we're still minimizing just a little bit here. So if we go even beaver tail to beaver tail right there on the back, we're gonna get a little bit less in the slide length. It's definitely gonna be thinner. And the overall height of this thing is gonna be a tiny bit more on the Sig because of the magazine base plate right there. So you're just gonna have a little hangover like that. Not a big deal, but that's why the Glock 19 is in there. Now a really close competitor is going to be the Hellcat Pro. This is gonna be an extremely similar in size and capacity. So the Hellcat Pro boasts these 15 rounders. They are very flush fit in there, whereas the Sig magazines are a little bit extended out of there. But for all intents and purposes, our size here is super similar. I mean, all the way around this from the rail, all the way through. And then I'll try and get these as flat as possible up here, slide to slide. And we will have basically the base plate of the magazine sticking out right there. So you're gaining a little bit in the overall height of it, but it is super similar. And both of these have a really good feel to them, giving you a feel that you are carrying a much bigger pistol than it actually is. So trigger pulls and size comparison, let's get into what I think about it and what this thing's gonna cost us. Sig Modularity, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that. So if you already have a 365 XL like this, and you maybe don't want the compensated slide or something, and you just want the capacity and all that of the X Macro, it will fit. So you can take your 365X slide and put it on the X Macro. You can take your X Macro slide, put it on the XL. Really depends on what you want to do with it and how much money you want to spend and what you already have. So if you've got a 365XL laying around and you just want the added capacity, as soon as the modules are available for sale, which I think they are, buy some mags, buy the module, and you are good to go with 17 rounds. And you just don't have the compensated slide. If you don't have anything, you may want to start with the 365X Macro, and then you can buy different modules and work that slide around as you see fit. So my final thoughts and the cost of this thing, I dig it. I like the way it runs, I like how flat it shoots, and I love the capacity and the overall feeling of this thing in the hand with the angles, the grip texture, even the trigger is very solid on it. I will say for the cost, this thing should definitely have 3 magazines with it. So Sig, if you're watching, do yourselves a favor and stop charging us $60 for an additional magazine and just give us 3. It is a great size for carry, whether your hands are medium, large, double XL, it just seems to fit. They nailed the overall size of this thing just right, especially with that capacity. Now, knowing all of that, our cost is coming in at $799 or more. And I say or more because I've seen a few stores selling them for quite a bit more. Now, in my opinion, it's cool and I dig it. But this thing is not $799 worth of pistol. $650 all day, but it seems to be Sig, again, just charging more for the sake of charging more, making a great $500 gun for $800. And I know people may disagree with me on that or may make some people angry, but there wasn't really much of a difference on the slide besides some machine work, and all you did was add a little bit of extra plastic in that polymer base there on the module end. So I would have liked to have seen this thing come in probably like $100 cheaper. With all that being said, I will definitely be keeping the X Macro because I bought it with my own money with the help of my Patreons out there. So thank you all very much. But We're gonna get a well over 1,000 round review on it, see if any issues arise since it's a new design up there on the slide, but I'm not expecting anything because pretty much everything in the guts is Sig as usual. Again, a huge thank you to all of my Patrons for the support and everybody else who has supported me for the past 3 years. If you're interested in anything you saw here today, follow the first link in the description. Takes you to my webpage where my blog post is. You can see all the links for my favorite EDC gear, knives, lights, all that good stuff. Nothing is for sale on my website. It's just links and some coupon and discount codes and stuff like that for you all to take advantage of. You want to support me on Patreon, you can check that out as well. Make sure you get subbed up, turn those bell notification icons on, and let me know down below, are you digging what Sig is doing? Because it seems to be they are releasing a lot of stuff really quickly out there. And I'm kind of a fan, like I said, of the 365 and 320 X series. Not so much on their other pistol line. So get out on the range, have some fun. Remember, if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. I will see you all on the next one.